What's up, peeps? Look, SEC Connect. It's been a few weeks. I've been out of country here for about 2.5 weeks. Jay's on travel still. Steven's on travel, but you got the three of us. You got me, you got Ty, you got Chris, and we got a few things we're going to talk about today. First off, fellas, how's it going, man?
Oh, same old, same old.
Same
Hey,
old. Chris, how about
it's
you?
it's been a while, man. It's been a while, man. We moving up to the east side now. You know what I'm saying? We doing things. We doing real big things, guys. Trust me, do real big things.
Sweet. All right. Hey, folks, the first thing that we're going to talk about today, Kadyn Proctor. Kadyn Proctor, did he really just do this? Last time I
Okay.
heard, Kadyn Proctor, who should be a guard, by the way, um, transfers to Iowa, hits the portal, transfers to Iowa, and now he hit the transfer portal again, and he's back at Alabama. All in the grand scheme of what, 35 days, Ty? 40 days?
Entered the portal January 18th, returned on the 19th of March.
All right, so 2 months. It's about 60 days. All right. How in the living hell does this happen? And why does it happen? I'm gonna turn it over to Ty since he is the Bama expert here.
Well, and listen, I know we're going to get into it, and I know you don't agree, but it's ironic that Nick Saban was just telling everybody what's up right now, and everybody hates the messenger. Even though you listen to Kirby concurs. You listen to coaches around college football, they concur. Lane Kiffin concurs. I find that people don't disagree with the message. They just hate that it comes from the messenger that dominated college football. That's what people have a weird aversion to dominance, right? And I think that's where a lot of these contentions come from. But Nick Saban was just warning everybody. College football in its current capacity has zero guardrails. I've said this time and time again. Chris, you and I have talked about this. Whenever NCAA versus Alston came down, the NCAA 10 days later said, okay, here's NIL. The problem is you had states out there, a lot of states that had passed NIL legislation, they couldn't do the same thing that California was doing or Texas was doing. So because the NCAA didn't put up any guardrails, you have inequality all over the sport. And if we're really trying to do equity-based, I don't know how we got here, but that's why I think revenue sharing is the best way to go. But Kadyn Proctor, man, I don't know. I don't know what's up, what's down. I was in the middle of doing something and I come out and I see that he's transferred back to Bama, and I did not have that on my bingo card. We'll see, but that's the state we're in. The NCAA can't enforce anything because they're scared they're going to end up back in court. By the way, there are 4 court cases coming in 2025 alone. Johnson, House, and then 2 other ones, and then 2026 cases. The NCAA can't enforce anything because they're acting out of self-preservation. But when acting out of self-preservation, that means sitting on their hands. That way they don't get taken to court again.
Chris, how about you?
All right. So let me get this straight. Let me pull this up again. Okay. So Kadyn Proctor, he commits to Iowa, but flips to Bama in high school. Plays a year and then enters the portal. Commits to Iowa around the same time the Swarm fundraises $100,000. Collects NIL money and re-enters the portal. Doesn't have to pay Iowa NIL back. First off, shout out to @GopherHole on Twitter for giving those details. Second off, I think that it's fair to say Iowa fans, Iowa citizens, Iowa residents, we're not laughing with you. We're laughing at you. I think it's safe to say that. You've been bamboozled. You've been swinged, Houdini, whatever you want to say, whatever adjective you have to describe this process. It's crazy. And on top of that, you got hit with an infraction with it.
Self-imposed. Self-imposed.
I don't know. I don't know what else to tell you except for we're laughing at you tonight. We're not. There's no ifs, ands, and buts.
Did you hear the audio they did of Ferentz? Where he was like, the good news is he didn't steal our playbook. And everybody was like, okay.
Yeah, right. Who cares? Who gives a shit?
yeah.
Yeah,
But
your
no,
playbook.
all jokes aside, though, I would just say, man, it's something has to be done about it, but I don't think it's something drastic that needs to be done. I think that you you make it hard. This is where I kind of get back into the eligibility. Do you mess with the player's eligibility if they try to do something like this, or do you make it to where they can't they can enter the portal, go to a different school, but they would have to basically complete that spring semester before they can get back on campus. So that's kind of where my mind went when I first heard this was, okay, now that I've had my laughs, what is what is your fallback? What do you do if you're the NCAA? Which, like Ty said, there's 4 cases coming up and all the rest of this stuff. But even with those cases, this is something that you would like for the NCAA to actually step up and do something about. But again, there's no commissioner, there's no special committee, there's no nothing that they have or that I've seen. Ty may differ with me on that, but there's no type of governance committee that I've seen on this topic right here to really talk about this. I mean, to really rule on this either. So I don't know what they're going to do. The kid's going to obviously be able to go back to Bama and probably get off scot free. I mean, $100,000 richer. So
Well, you remember a court in December put out an injunction stating that
uh-huh.
the NCAA couldn't enforce their transfer portal rules, and the NCAA explicitly said we're not going to fight it. And the reason is because they know that they're not. So at this point, the NCAA, even if they wanted to say, "Hey, you have to sit out," if he even says, "Oh, well, I'll just open up a lawsuit," they're going to say, "Okay, never mind, go." Like that's what they've done to every person. The second the Walker situation started to escalate at North Carolina, they backed up and they're like, all right,
Mm-hmm.
our bad, our bad, our bad. They've done this with everybody because they do not have any standing.
Mm-hmm.
Every court has undermined the NCAA's standing consistently.
So Ty, Nick, if I may, same subject, but if I may just kind of progress it forward, here's a question that I have for Ty, especially that just popped up in my mind. Nick, do you want to go before I ask that question?
Yeah, so
Go ahead.
what is the official rules? I thought the official rule was you get one transfer for free, right? And then after that one transfer, you got to sit out a year.
No, because of that injunction,
Yep.
it's pandemonium right now. It doesn't
Which
matter.
is that's exactly when we were talking earlier, and that Nick Saban is talking about.
Mm-hmm.
The
I thought he was
NCAA
talking
has no
about the
standing.
money aspect.
No, he said that college football as a whole needed to change. The current capacities aren't sustainable, and they're absolutely not. At a point where you have college coaches succeeding off of the current landscape,
Mm-hmm.
and they're the ones, Lane Kiffin. Name me the last time Ole Miss pulled the recruiting class they just pulled.
Yeah.
And here goes my camera. I don't know what's going on with my camera, guys. I've been having
Yeah,
this
you
little
got a
like
little.
button pop
Yeah.
up. There it goes, and it's been freezing up, and I don't know why. But that's the thing, man. There was supposed to be that rule, but the
Uh-huh.
NCAA can't act on anything because they're trying to act out of self-preservation. It's the same reason when Justice Kavanaugh said, we're coming after your antitrust structure. All of a sudden, 10 days later, they were like, oh, well, here's NIL. We could have done it for years, but we just rapidly put it together in 10 days. That's why states weren't on equal footing. That's why Texas, California, they got a head start on NIL when states like Alabama and Florida, they had to repeal legislative laws put forth before the NCAA ever put forward NIL legislation to even be on equal footing. They had to wait a year later. And that's nobody's fault. Like, by all means, if you're Texas, if you're California, use every advantage at your disposal. The problem is when you have a governing body who's supposed to keep everything equitable and they're currently saying there's no equity in all of this, that's where I'm just like, the NCAA's done.
Mm-hmm.
They're done.
I think also is the fact that a lot of their rules have been exposed as far as the loopholes and all the rest of that stuff for the longest. I think the perfect example. Look at Drew Pine. Drew Pine was at Notre Dame for the longest, went to Arizona State. Now is going to be the backup at Missouri. So obviously he's a grad transfer, but at the same time you would think that he already used that grad transfer to go to Arizona State, play there, and then now he's going to Missouri. You get what I'm saying? So I mean, I think that injunction is standing tall, and you're seeing it with guys now on the move, because now you're seeing a lot of guys, even the guys who have already used their grad transfer. Their ability to use that grad transfer, now they're on the move yet again, and now you're seeing guys, who was that? Was that Steven, or was that you, Nick, who put out that tweet or whatnot about, they felt like, these guys who are 24, 25, 26, who are getting that extra year, that COVID year and stuff, like, this is a game that should be played by 18 to 22-year-olds. Well, these other guys are basically exploiting that and taking advantage of it. Not saying that it's wrong. All of our teams have benefited from having those super seniors on the team, but it just further illustrates the point that the NCAA is becoming more and more obsolete in this conversation. And that's a thing of, we need these conferences to actually step up, because the NCAA is incapable of doing anything.
And Robert's comment here, here's the interesting part, Nino and Chris. He says, did he pay NIL money back? You're going to like this verbiage, guys. He doesn't have to, because at the point where if there was a stipulation, it's a quid pro quo, and quid pro quos are supposed to be illegal in NIL. So you can't enforce having him pay it back, because you would be inherently saying this was an enticing offer to get you to come here, and that is categorically illegal, though it happens all the time. Josh Pate talked about 2 instances. Unfortunately, I know about both of them in the SEC, where SEC players after a game or during a game held their team hostage for more NIL money. And that's not supposed to be what this is about. But because the NCAA can't enforce anything, this is where we are, in a complete pandemonium.
Now, I know there are going to be people out there who he needs to pay that money back, or he needs to do this. That's kind of where the conversation switches to my question about this. I think as this conversation evolves, I think we gotta, Ty, Nick, you guys may differ with me on this, but to me, going back to Alabama may not be the best decision unless they move him inside, because I feel like for that offense and with that scheme for offensive line, I feel like his game fits it at some point, but he's going to have to cut that weight. He's going to have to
slim
He
down.
needs to lose weight.
Yeah, he's going to
He played at
have to,
375. He needs to play at 350.
because that scheme calls for, a hog molly like him, but it also calls for an athletic guy that can move, right? And so I think going to somewhere like Iowa, where he initially was going to go, and playing downhill north south, you're going to run the ball. It's not too much that you're doing in that scheme. Everybody knows it. If you could get a passing threat, maybe you'll be something decent. But other than that, I think they would play more to his liking. But him going back to Bama, I don't necessarily know if that's the greatest thing. Now, you guys may differ with me on that, like I keep saying, but I'm a little bit not worried, but I am a little bit interested in that situation, how that develops, because I think DeBoer is somebody who would say, hey, it's a new regime, new everything. This is what we're looking for. Either you're going to cut the weight and move inside, or we're going to sit you, let you learn, get your body composition right, and then we're going to give it a go, and you're it. But I don't know if you could really bring him back in and not make him a starter automatically, especially when he has same amount of experience as everybody else basically now.
Yeah, how many games he played last year? 14 games?
All of them, yeah.
I think he started all of them too, right?
Yeah. And he actually got better towards the end.
Played with the hurt ligament in his ankle in the Michigan game too, and I know that was a bad showing by him. But you remember we talked about there was a lot of talk before that game that Elijah Pritchett was going to be getting the start over him. And so I think that's a fair question, Chris. I really do. That's my biggest concern. In all fairness,
guard.
Yeah,
you have to go in the guard.
That would solve a lot. That would solve a lot.
You're both right. You're both 100% right. Yeah. Now, right tackle is interesting, and I'm going to tell you, because Bama is in a position where there's questions at the tackle. They have the highest graded returning guard tandem, I believe, in college football. If you look at the top 10 interior offensive linemen, per Pro Football Focus grades, 3 of them are now at Bama. Parker Brailsford, who is the highest graded returning center, the second highest graded center last year, Booker, and then Jaden Roberts. So you're not going to get that guard position. But right tackle, I do agree with both of you, right? Like, I'm interested. Maybe cutting the weight will be good for him. I actually today earlier on Bama Football on YouTube, I got to do a podcast with Jake Merrill, and he played safety for Washington back in the gap, and he was telling me, he was like, I don't know why in the hell they had Proctor at 365 as an 18-year-old. He was like, that made no sense to me going out there. And in fairness, I agree. Bama's offensive line was catastrophic last year, number 129 in sacks allowed.
But a lot of that too has to do with the quarterback too. He's not your typical quarterback. He gets outside the pocket. He's trying to run a little bit, and those are counted as sacks. So yes,
Well,
I don't
one
disagree, but this is a problem that's been for 3 years. Bama has
Yeah.
averaged as the 99th best offensive line over the course of the past 3 years. So this has been a systematic problem at Alabama.
So
Yeah.
with the coach that came, didn't he come from he came from one of the Kentucky schools, right?
Coach Eric Walford, yeah.
Yeah, and I remember because I remember him because on your podcast, Ty, Round the Table Sports, quick plug, me and Ty talked about it, and I told him, I said, hey, from everything I've read about this guy should be able to come in and immediately make an impact. And it hasn't been the impact that we all expected.
Doug
So
Marrone started a negative trajectory at Alabama, and the offensive line has not been within the top 50 or 60 or 70 or even 80 offensive lines since 2020. Like I said, they've averaged number 99 in the nation in terms of sack allowed, and that's with like Bryce Young.
That's that year that Flood left.
Yeah, no, 100%. You're 100% right. And Kyle Flood, there's a reason why when I'm talking about the best offensive line coaches in the nation, I give flowers to Bill Bedenbaugh, but Kyle Flood is right there. That guy is a freaking wizard, man. Like, he is a wizard at recruiting, developing, you name it.
And also Flood has a type, and I think he left a type at Alabama,
and they didn't know what to do with
coach didn't know what to do with that
Exactly.
type.
100%.
Yep.
Y'all got a wizard, though, at offensive line
I'm
coach.
excited about it. I love our offensive line. But yeah, look, man, it's gonna be interesting. But getting back to Proctor with him leaving and stuff, I heard that he didn't take the $100,000, and I heard that he did. So I don't know what to believe. I would probably sway to believe that he did take the $100,000.
And if he did, so what? It's his money, cash money, baby.
It's his.
Y'all
But this is my only problem with all this, right? Look, NIL is a good thing if it is done the right way, right? And I think we all kind of understand that. The problem with college football is the NFL has no minor league. They just don't. Every other major sport has a minor league, and the NFL doesn't. The NFL's minor league is the NCAA.
That's a good point.
And so if you have a kid who's really good in baseball, right, and he's coming out of high school, or he's really good in hockey, or he's good in tennis, or basketball, you can go to the G League, or you can go overseas for a year and then go to the draft. There's not that opportunity in football. So, I look at a guy like Adrian Peterson. He's one of the only guys who I thought could play as a true freshman in the NFL. Like, when I saw Adrian Peterson play, I said, this kid he would be a top 2 or 3 running back in the league right now, right? But everybody's not Adrian Peterson, right? But there are guys that we've seen that have been after year 1, after year 2, you're like, oh, he doesn't need another year of football, in college. His body's mature enough, he's ready. Or if he just doesn't want to go to school but wants to play football, where can he go do this? There are no options, right? And I think once you look at NIL, people talk about how it's really good for other sports too. Look, NIL is for football. It is what it is. Football pays for everything on every campus at all these major schools. They pay for everything, even like the low tier schools. When they go play at Alabama or Oklahoma or Texas or Texas A&M, they get paid very handsomely to go play against one of those teams. $1.8 million for some, $2 million for some. That doesn't happen in basketball. It's not at that level. It doesn't happen in baseball. Baseball teams don't even have enough scholarships to go around for all their players on the teams usually. Track and field, the same way. The people who are making the money are these football players. And so Nick Saban did make a good comment. He said that it's like free agency. He said it's basically a pay for play system. The only thing that I got to argue on this is even before NIL, when you guys agree that this is a pay for play system.
Yeah.
Yes, but because of the systematic rules, there was far more structure. And that's why I think that the thing that's being lost, everybody's upset. Oh, Nick,
What's the structure though? What was the structure when
you
it was
had
illegal?
actual rules. Like, let me ask you this. If Kadyn Proctor 5 years ago would have transferred to Iowa, it came out that he took $100,000 and then came back, would Iowa have gotten the death penalty? I can answer that. Yes, they did the same thing to SMU for paying light bills. So to
Yeah.
argue that it hasn't changed,
But
that's not in the realm of existence.
but that info wouldn't have got out though, because these kids
But
been
it did
getting
at
paid for
SMU.
30, 40 years.
Sure,
but that
but
was
the
like
thing
the
is,
It would have got out. It would have got
yeah,
out.
that's a
Miami,
terrible
come
argument.
on
But
now.
I mean, look, no.
Hell,
Look here,
Rick
okay,
guys.
Bomar,
but I
Rick
guess
Bomar,
are
nigga,
we
today.
How many players from
are we
our teams have
operating
gotten
under the
paid?
assumption that things are completely
How many players from our teams have gotten paid? And we
true?
all know that they've
It
gotten
happened all
paid,
across college football.
and it's never gotten reported.
Okay, I guess my thing is this. If you're a doctor and you've had patients that have pneumonia for years, and all of a sudden the weather changes and now you have an influx of cold, and now pneumonia cases are worse, you have an ability to fix it. Are we just going to throw up our hands and say, well, shit, we've had pneumonia forever? No, you're going to get fired. Like that's why I hear what you're saying, but from an argument, I don't understand how it applies. Like, yes, this has always happened behind closed doors, but now when you rip away the guardrails and you say, hey, this is legal, I'll put it like this. In the spirit of NIL, collectives were a major contention because it flies against name, image, and likeness. That's why whenever Nick Saban got there, he said something that nobody's talking about. He said, do a revenue share and NIL, but do a revenue share. That way everybody makes more money and you can still do name, image, and likeness. If Gatorade wants to come sponsor your quarterback, go get Gatorade to come sponsor your quarterback. That's what name, image, and likeness is.
The only problem with the revenue share is once you start to revenue share, now it takes a lot of money away from your school. So now that new building that you want might not get built.
Yeah, but we already just heard the Ole Miss AD come out and flat out say, why am I going to put in? The thing is, bro, is you just had 3 ADs say in an interview, why would I invest money in buildings when I could just invest and pay for play? Ole Miss's AD just said that. So we're already there.
I mean, if I may just interject, I mean, I tend to agree with Ty simply for the fact of kind of what I'm doing now is just why not just get those contracts situated? Why not already have stuff that's already kind of set there
Well, so
that
just
you
make
can
them employees.
huh?
Well, so
Yeah.
basically,
Not even unionizing or whatnot, but just having set contracts for like, hey, look, this is the contract. This is basically you're having templates across the board, kind of like
I
what
think
you
that's
said.
the only way you're gonna have to do it is have to make it a union. So
Yeah,
Dartmouth
well,
is
I
doing
mean,
it right
yeah,
now.
But that's
but
what happened at Dartmouth.
Yeah,
I don't know
so
if y'all
Dartmouth
saw
is doing it.
there's
Yeah.
the Dartmouth
But-
thing. Now,
but what
granted,
I'm-
that's a different situation, but
what
it's,
I'm talking more or less of is just that I mean you're basically with the revenue sharing. I think that you could make life easy, and you could have these templates. You're just having a bank of contracts out there. Hey, Gatorade, blah blah blah, this and that. These are the terms. These are this, blah blah blah. This is what we want to do with you. This is what we're willing to pay. We can negotiate the price for each select player. But they already have all these different things, and they get to kind of like pick and choose off of that, basically making them like the vendor almost. I mean, I think something where it's more uniform across the board to where, hey, these are the set parameters. I think that would help, or that will at least be a start, because right now it's the wild, wild west. I mean,
Look, here's a
there's
good
no
comment by
regulations,
James.
rules, or any type of like laws about it. We're waiting for cases to come out to have case law to point to, but it's still not producing any legislation or any type of law that's going to fix it. So, I mean,
Yeah.
I think the only way that you could fix it is by having these just a damn bank of
Has to
just
be a union.
contracts already
Has to be
set
some
up.
kind of union, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So James has a good comment here. He says, "So look, man, the NFL works because both the teams and players have power, and they both have to come to the table for negotiations. And I
Yeah.
think that it's that second part. Players have power, and prior to NIL, players they were, come on, student athletes,
Athletes, yeah.
right? I mean, and I put student in big quotes, okay? Because we can all go through and look at our favorite team and go look at what are the majors of these student athletes.
True.
And it is 9 times out of 10, it's a major that the coaching staff pushes to these student athletes so that they can pass classes easy and play, right? So now, I want to take it back and say the players at college now have some power, right? And it's never been like this. They've had a little power, right? Hey, sir, hey, coach, I'm not coming here. I'm going to school X because they just dropped me a $300,000 bag and your bag's 150, right? So look, I'm going to go play at, Western Kentucky, Illinois State or something like that, right? All right. So yeah, they had a little power, but not so much. Now they really got power. They really have power. And I'm with you. Things have to be regulated. I like the first rule. You transfer one time, free, great. But the NCAA should hold up the standard where after that first one, it's done. You got to sit out a year. And I thought that that was a perfect rule because kids do, they're 18-year-old kids,
They
right?
can't do it because the
Yeah.
lack of antitrust. So in order for that to happen, they have to do away with their antitrust structure, which means you're getting revenue sharing or the end of the NCAA. Like that's where this is going.
And so this is my thing. If we end the NCAA, is it just for footballs or is it all sports?
That's the question, man. Like that is I don't that's why I get so frustrated about this, and I'm frustrated at the NCAA because Nick, I mean, Chris, how long have all of us, well before we've all met each other and started this, how long have we all acknowledged, even mentally, that the NCAA is a dying model because their inability to do anything?
No, I mean we've said that
Yeah.
constantly.
But it's their own inaction that's gotten us here. Right? Like that's the part that kills me is they wanted to be so greedy, but what they failed to realize is if you would have just taken $100 million instead of $150 million, you could have kept control of college football indefinitely and reaped year after year. But now, because of your greed and because of your inability to do something, here we are. And you're right, Nino, that this has always happened, right? Like even before NIL, we know people are dropping bags, whether that's poker chips,
Yeah. And it was an
farm
unfair
equipment.
advantage to a bunch of schools.
Yes,
Right.
yes. But
And
where I've always disagreed with people is when they say the NIL, with the lack of provisions, is going to make college football more equitable. My argument has always been how? The haves will have more and the have nots will have less. Texas is a have. Alabama is a have. Oklahoma State ain't a have. Oregon State ain't a have. UCLA ain't a have. And now the pack is gone. They're done. So we're already seeing the have nots that were supposed to be so saved by what's happening, they're gone. And now, if you're not one of 6, 7 schools, good luck. Like you didn't have a chance before, you really don't have a chance now. Great example. If someone's transferring from Bama, where are they looking? Texas, Ohio State, Oklahoma. They want to go to a have. But Texas, Bama,
Well,
Oklahoma, we can point at Louisiana's best player and say, come on down. And guess what's going to happen? He's going to come on down. Y'all got an absolute monster from UTSA. Trey Moore is going
Trey
to
Moore's
set
a
the
beast.
SEC on fire. Y'all got, what's his name? The kid from, what's his name? The edge y'all got, Chris?
I'm talking about Willard.
So, like, now the haves literally just point at the have nots and say, you come here, and they come. And I understand people are like, you can't hoard 5-star talent. Yeah, but if you look at the talent that's transferring away from a lot of these universities, how are they panning out? No
Yeah,
offense, but Demoy Kennedy went to Colorado. He's no longer on the roster. So, was Alabama hoarding him, or did it just not pan out? You know
But
what I mean? Like,
I
but
feel like the
also,
portal hasn't worked for Lincoln up there at USC. And that's not even me throwing shade. Dorian Singer was supposed to be that
yeah,
guy
he's
this
supposed to
year,
be
and it was
something.
Bosh
He didn't do
Gibbs.
anything.
Yeah,
But one thing, I will kind of counter to that though, Ty, is uh when guys transfer from the portal and it's the halves going to the halves, It's your top tier guys. Now there are a lot of guys that are in those classes, those classes that are 25 to 30 people deep that are 4-star guys. Some are even high 4-star, fringe 5-star guys that transfer out and they don't go to the halves. So we have stuff like that. Like even let's say
But how
Texas
do they
had
do? Because I can tell you from Bama's perspective, I can't name you a player that transferred that was supposed to be like, oh, this is going to really hurt Bama. And then they gone on and did anything. I'm not trying to throw shade, but like,
no,
no
but
offense, but like
no,
Jaleel
but
Billingsley, Ajayi Hall, Demoy Kennedy, Keelan Robinson, all of those were supposed to hurt. And
no, but that kind of makes my point. Um, I'm saying here is that some of the guys that come from the halves, which every coaching staff in the country wanted when they came out of high school, for some odd reason, they don't make it at the halves and they end up at North Texas, or they end up at South Alabama, or they end up at Indiana, or so it's not like not all of them are going to the halves. It's your top guys. It's your Kadyn Proctors, right?
No, it's your top. Yeah, you're
Yeah. I
right.
mean,
sure, but doesn't that then reinforce that the have-nots are getting the guys that weren't working out, and that therefore it's not like the ranking is indicative of how they are? Because Demoy Kennedy, number
but
38 player in the
but
nation.
but is it not working out because they got somebody really good in front of them and they can't showcase their skills, or is it not working out because you're just not good?
Well, at the
That
point where they're transferring and not finding success, I think that answers the question. No.
so both of your top 2 points. Third off, they're getting recruited over. I mean, that's something that you
Yeah.
gotta
True.
think about as well.
True.
I mean, there's a lot of things happen, but at the same time, it still is a yin yang, excuse me, yo-yo effect, or however you want to say it, simply because that's why TCU was able to make a national championship game. That's why Colorado was so electric to start the season. That's why Iowa State has made a couple of Big 12 championship games. It's simple. It's simple,
Eh,
But I just think that it's crazy that we have these conversations periodically about NIL when the average NIL deal is not even really worth even five
Yeah, I know.
thousand
True.
dollars.
True. True. True.
But
Yeah,
it's
and that's
it's
what's so
it's the
crazy,
guys
man.
at the top, and that's what everybody's pissed at. Is you have a 5-star like Kadyn Proctor who pulls these kind of shenanigans, right? Or you have a Caleb Downs who leaves Alabama and goes to Ohio State, or you have different players around. You got a Cam Ward who's all world and he goes where he's going. DJU leaves and goes from Clemson to Oregon
Oregon
State, and now
State,
he's
yeah.
at Florida State, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's the top guys, and I think those are the game changers in college, right? So college football, honestly, you could be one player away, right, from being awesome. Look at
Oh
Auburn and Cam
boy.
Newton, right? I mean, Auburn without Cam Newton is nowhere near sniffing the national championship, right? So you can be one transcendent player away from being one of the best teams in the country, if you have adequate pieces around you. Not even great pieces, just adequate. But you got to find that guy. And so it's the movement around of those top guys. But there are examples of guys like a Tyler Johnson who came from Texas and he was a 5-star lineman and he didn't do anything at Texas. He goes to Houston, right? And he becomes an all conference player at Houston. And for his last year, now he's going to Colorado because their line sucks, right? So, there's been examples of guys who have went from bigger schools to some smaller schools and did some good things too as well. But um, everybody's up in orange because of the big players, right? Those are the guys that move the needle. Those are the guys who bring the money into the schools. Those are the guys who were game changers, right? And so when those guys start to move, then it starts to kind of rumble some folks. But there's a bunch of people talking about contracts, and I don't know if I'm cool with the contract, like construct, because then it kind of locks a kid in to something. Maybe they were getting into something that they didn't think they were getting into. Maybe the coach leaves. Like, do you still have to honor that contract if the coach
No,
leaves?
you're not locking them in per se. What you're doing is giving. You're basically saying, hey, Gatorade, you or Dr. Pepper, you want Jackson Arnold to be the face Fansville next year or
It's not
whatever,
going
those
to happen.
Fansville commercials. Well, yeah, obviously, hopefully they go with hopefully they're definitely not going to go with Arch Manning. You know, he can't even put his likeness in a video game. But anyways, I digress.
And the funny thing about that is, like, if he would have just like opted into the game because he didn't want to be a distraction, it would have been far less of a distraction.
Yeah,
That's neither
exactly.
here nor there,
Yeah.
right? I
Oh,
heard that and I was like, okay, all
so
right.
so with that being said, no, Nick, what I'm saying is that you basically tell, hey, Dr. Pepper, you want that to happen? Okay, cool. Well, give us a standardized contract, your contract. Let our player talk with you, figure it out. If he has representation, he has representation. If he doesn't, then I mean, he signed an affidavit, something like that. But basically, he's not locking into something where he has to stay there 3 years at a school or whatever. Basically, he's saying, hey, this is what you guys want to offer me. You guys want to say, hey, I will sign this contract. I will appear in 4 different commercials for you guys, and I will be paid $200,000, right?
Which,
Well, what if he says,
yeah.
no, my value is worth more than that? Then he negotiates the terms, but he's not locked into anything. It's just a contract. It's a contract for these vendors, these people who want to come out. That's what they're doing, anyways.
No,
Any NIL agreement that I've worked on, I can tell you that the contracts have basically contracts, agreements, whatever you want to call them, have pretty much been the same to where it's set up. We have these terms and we're negotiating back and forth regardless. So,
no.
I mean, their
So
representation, their agents, and all of them are doing all of that anyways. They're not going to lock them into something because a lot of this stuff is just one off stuff, anyways.
no, so Mars is talking about contracts with the players in the schools. That's what he's talking about, and I don't think that's going to work. Like I just don't think that's going to work. You know, we've never had a construct where a kid has a 3-year contract or a 4-year contract at a school. College football is a year by year contract.
I
Now,
agree with that. I agree with that
schools
completely.
schools honor 4 years of contract use, and most schools will say, if I put you on scholarship, I'm going to continue to have you on scholarship until you get your degree. And so tons of schools do that. I know Texas did that back in the day, but yeah, contracts with schools are year to year contracts. It's never a
Yeah.
3 or 4 year contract.
No,
Like,
I no locking into that would be that. No, that's not a
yeah,
good contract. That's not
yeah,
a good
and
contract.
so so Boomer says, look, should be like a 3-year contract with a 4th year option. And no, I'm not cool with that. I think the kids should have an option to transfer.
Yeah.
But it needs to be regulated. I really like the first structure of what it had. You got the one free transfer, and then after that, it's time for you to sit a year. That would be the ideal situation. But if they can't, hold, like the college's football to the fire when it comes to this, then what the hell are we even talking about it for, right? So that's the crazy part about it is they got to be able to enforce it. I don't know how they enforce it. I don't know how they can enforce it. That's just my opinion.
Or
Pandora's box has been opened.
take
Yeah.
take something, take a page out of the NBA's book. How about this? How about how about now? No, I'm just gonna say it just to get it out there. But how about you basically make it to where, okay, this team can offer you NIL, they can offer you money or whatnot, but when you go to this school needs to basically offer you a better chance to make it to the next level. They put more focus on that, basically saying this school can't offer you more than the school that you're at right now.
But you can't quantify that. There's no way you can quantify that.
I mean that's true. I mean
You know,
I'm just thinking outside of the box
like
right now.
there's
Trying to
no way
think.
that you can quantify that. That's like saying,
Mhm.
um, name a player. Let's look at what's the kid that played. He played cornerback at Florida, and he left Florida, went to like Western Kentucky, and left there, went somewhere else. Jenkins. Golly, what's his name? Jenkins. This was like years ago. But anyway, he was at Florida. He played cornerback, and he ended up getting in trouble and transferred out and went to a lesser school and still went to the league. So I'm looking at it from this like era. If that were a guy who transferred out, and he had like some NIL money, going to a lesser school for him wouldn't primarily put him in the best opportunity to succeed and make money in the next level. But that is so hard to quantify. There's no way you can quantify that. There's no way. Because a guy like Carson Wentz gets picked in the first 2 picks of the draft. Trey Lance gets picked in the first. It's like these guys went to smaller schools, so they
Mhm.
went to schools like bigger than, well, like smaller schools, and they got drafted over guys that went to
And
bigger
I
schools,
and I
right?
get that,
So
but I'm
it's hard
just
to
trying to
quantify that.
I'm trying to figure out a way to avoid the whole eligibility thing because I think that's where that's the obvious rule that you should go back to as far as mess with players' eligibility to stop all of this. But like Ty said, you've already opened up Pandora's box so much that you can't close it anymore. Like you can't do that.
Yeah, the NCAA can't act because they know they're going to end up in a lawsuit. At the point where Justice Kavanaugh, they weren't there to talk about the antitrust structure of the NCAA, and Justice Kavanaugh got done with his opinion and then said, but wait, there's more, doing his best Billy Mays impersonation, and then took everybody in the court to something totally different and was like, your whole antitrust structure is suspect. You cannot run an organization off of the theory that you don't have to pay your fair market, your workers a fair market wage off of the theory that you don't have to do it. That told me right then and there, the Supreme Court is begging people to open up lawsuits against the NCAA because that's not what they were there to talk about. He went outside of his scope. Some legal experts have even argued he did too much by saying what he said because it was outside of the scope of what they were there to talk about. But to me, it was a clear signal. Sue the NCAA because we're interested in ripping them apart. And now the NCAA, there's a reason why you'd see the NCAA. I'll put it like this: the lawsuit Virginia and Tennessee did you see where the NCAA took away their arguments against it? Like the NCAA is bowing out of the lawsuit because they don't want to escalate things anymore. They're trying to self-preserve, and the best way to do that is to stay out of court. That's why their first action was to go to Congress and say, please give us an exemption. That way the Supreme Court doesn't bend us over. Like, they are done. But the NCAA did this themselves. They did this themselves.
I just wonder why. Like honestly, all this is about football. It's all
True.
football. It's all football, and I just don't understand why throughout the years, football has been the only sport that has been neglected a minor league. And I think if that were to ever have happened 30, 40, 50 years ago, we wouldn't be in this situation, right? If NFL teams had farm leagues like baseball, but this is the NFL's fault too because they don't want to guarantee pay for players, right? They don't want to take the risk. You got these billionaire owners. Jerry Jones has shit. He has the wealthiest franchise probably in all sports, right? Or top three. But you would probably never see him try to do anything like this because it's going to take away from his bottom line, even though he's already a multi-billionaire. But that this should have happened a long time ago. There should have been farm leagues a long time ago.
Yeah.
To where kids who didn't want to go to college or get drafted into a farm league have the option to go to college or go to a farm league and make money or just go to school, just like in baseball and hockey and every other sport. But the NFL didn't do anything with this. The NCAA didn't want that to happen because it would take out money from them. And here we are. Here we are. Now, James has a good comment. He says that he thinks that the top 40 schools should break away, file LLCs, take football from scholarships and create a for-profit semi-pro league. But how could that happen with the schools still having their names attached to these teams? Like, so would Texas take off the Longhorn off this semi-pro league team? Would Alabama take off, the Roll Tide off of
Question.
it? So would Oklahoma take off the Sooner on it? Would it just be the Oklahoma team, the Texas Orange
That
and
sounds
White?
terrible.
The Texas A&M, white and crimson, or whatever. But so how would that work? Like I don't see how that works. I've been hearing how people think that football should kind of rip themselves apart and form their own league, but how does that work with the schools in the other sports? And eh, look, I don't see how it works, man. I just don't. I don't see how it works. This is gonna have to be unionized.
He's on to something with that though.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's gonna have to be unionized.
Well, it's funny because the NCAA, the SEC. I don't know if y'all saw these reports, but the SEC and the Big Ten are already attempting to do just that. They're already
Yeah.
drafting provisions to get out of the NCAA because they can't do anything. Like I would kill to be a fly on the wall of an NCAA meeting and just hear what they're saying, because I imagine that room is on fire 24/7,
All right, we should go.
365.
I'm sure that
So
they should have open meetings, right? They should
Oh
we
God,
should just
no. They
go. We
don't
should
want my
pop up in
opinion.
there.
So, all right. So this is a good comment here too. From Booner 129. He goes, "It just seems like the school has all the responsibility, and the player can just say peace out when they, like get their feelings hurt or get homesick. It's not sustainable." But I mean, I get it, but one player is not going to stop Bama from making $10 million a game.
True.
So
It never has.
True.
Great shirts, great shirts, Ty.
It's not going to stop Florida State from making a shit ton of money every year. Um, the schools have always had all the leverage, right? I think the thing now is the schools have athletes that are not employees that now have some power, and they can buck against the system. But we're only talking about 1% of the players here, folks. This isn't happening for 99% of the players in college football. This is like your 1%. Now, mind you,
Well, I
that
think that
1%.
it's gotten to much more than that, because I don't know if you heard, Mike Locksley had his third string running back come up and say, "I need 100 racks or I'm gone."
Well,
And
let him
I
go.
think about 15 coaches have come forward and said, "That's not a one-off."
Well,
So
hey,
I
well,
think
let him
what you're
go.
seeing, but I think it speaks to the thing of, we're operating under the assumption that this is a 1% thing. Coaches are saying, the people in the trenches are saying something different.
Well, how about this? We're going to see how much you're worth in the open market, and when nobody wants you for $100,000, um,
Well,
you
that's
might
why
be
you
able to
have
come
so
back
many
and go to
people still
school.
in the transfer portal. That's why it's
Yeah,
like you have thousands of kids that aren't finding homes.
but that needs to happen. Sorry to the kids, but that
True.
needs to happen
You know,
to show everybody that, hey, this is the ramifications if you do some stupid shit.
this
Right?
is what I have to say about it, because it kind of feels like, especially the boomers out there, boomer son, it feels like a lot of the boomers out there and maybe some other old heads probably felt like, hey, everything's totally cool. Once they get taxed, then they'll start coming back trying to figure this NIL thing out. And that just hasn't happened. And that's kind of the weird thing about this, is that you feel like, because I don't know if they're considered W-2 when they get this money, or if they're 1099 independent contractors, because you would think that the kids themselves would have to pay taxes on all this money that they're making.
It's got to be
So
1099s for them, right? Because they
it'd
can't be
have to be,
employees.
right?
Yeah, so dude, man, this is crazy.
I
But
mean,
look,
I feel
I'm
like
for
that's a
NIL.
part of it. That, yeah,
Don't get me twisted. I'm for the player,
yeah,
right? I'm always gonna be for the player because look, man, I look at coaches and I look at Steve Sarkisian. He's probably made over $100 million in salary, right? Um, I think Saban's made 200 million in salary, 180. Kirby's made a shit ton of money. Dabo, I mean, he's made money. I mean, look at Dabo, not Dabo, Jimbo. Jimbo kind of robbed A&M for a shit ton of money, right? So, I look at stuff from the player standpoint, and I look at from where some of these players come from, and I can't blame them. I can't. I can't blame them. I've seen where some of these players come from, and I can't blame them. However, however, there does have to be some kind of controls on this and some kind of parameters. But if it's stuff that's outside of the school and the governing body of the school, I don't know how you regulate it. I don't. I don't know how you regulate. I don't know how you can if it's stuff that's outside of the school. The schools can't be attached to the money because guess what? The kids can't be paid from the school, right? They can't be employees.
That's why you have to change the entire structure.
And so I like the union idea. I think Dartmouth is onto something with that. But if you unionize it, then are we saying that the 53rd player or like the player who's number 85 on the roster is worth just as much as Bryce Young, or worth as much as Quinn, or worth as much
Well,
as
just
that's
because you
that's where it gets
unionize
tricky.
doesn't necessarily. Well, that's where I disagree, because th- does that same argument apply to the NFL? No, like you can pay different people. Just because you unionize in
Yeah,
this facet wouldn't mean that every player has to get X amount. You get a revenue share just like the NFL, and you're like, hey,
but there's got to be a minimum, right?
Sure, sure.
It's
At
got to
that
be
point,
everybody
there
makes
is a
at least
minimum.
this. You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
yeah, that would happen. But at that point, you could be like, okay, every team gets X amount of dollars, and that's for you to work with your roster. That's your money to spread around. That's what Nick Saban was on Capitol Hill saying is like, hey, let's do a revenue share and NIL. And Stubby, I hear you. People saying that Nick Saban was crying. And I will ask you this, though, Stubby, and don't get me wrong, Texas has done great recruiting, right? No doubt. How many times since NIL has been passed has Texas had a class that ranked higher than Alabama, even though they have all the money on God's green earth?
They haven't.
They haven't. So that argument kind of doesn't work in its entirety, right? Like saying that Nick Saban couldn't adapt. He's been out recruiting schools with far more money. He's had the number 1 class, the number 2 class, and the number 2 class with NIL. So I mean, if not adapting is still pulling in top 2 classes and making the college football playoffs, I think a lot of coaches out there would need to adapt. Or not adapt, I mean. Stubby said what? No, I partially agree with what you're saying, Stubby. I definitely. Texas always has the best recruiting class. Oh, okay. We're getting trolled.
Yeah, we're getting trolled here, Stubby. Come on, man. I'm not sure what his point is. I don't know, Stubby. It is what it is. Look, it's going to be interesting, man. I don't know, but getting back to Saban, I do feel like it was a little bit of crying. I mean, that's just me. Uh, I think he kind of laid out why he retired, and we get it. Um, but it's shit has to get regulated. Stuff's going to happen, but I just don't know how it can, and I don't know how schools are going to be able to separate football from the other sports. It's probably going to happen here in the next couple of years. I just got to see it happen because I don't see how it's going to happen.
I think the closer that we get to the super conferences that we all know are coming, whether that be in 2030, whether that be in 2045. I think that those super conferences are going to get away from the NCAA and partner all together and form their own thing. I think they're going to separate somehow. They're going to force their way out of there and
So
be
you're
able to
saying like
compete.
the SEC is not going to be part of NCAA,
No, but they're already drafting stuff for that.
No,
but is that only for football? It's for everything.
That's a great question.
that's
That's
I
the
the
would
question.
assume
question.
it's for everything. That's a
I would
great
No, I
assume
question.
I
mean,
would assume it's just for football.
but how can you do that? How can you separate one faction of your school and leave everybody else in the dry? Because now if you separate football from the entire school, then can that piece of your school that is not now your school, how do you manage that to where they're able to still help your school but still keep that still afloat too because they're a separate entity? That's got to be a lot of massaging getting done there. We think it's dirty now. You think it's
That
dirty now?
that
I
is
mean, could
for that is for compliance and the general counsel for
you
those
think it's
colleges
dirty
to figure
now?
out.
Just think how much,
Yeah.
if these are separate governing bodies and entities, these coaches are going to get paid massive. These players are going to be paid massive because they're separate from the school. Now they're probably not going to be state employees anymore, right? I mean, it's going to be a whole different structure if this
Yeah.
happens, which is, man, this is
But I
crazy.
mean, but
Yeah.
that's the thing, Nick. That's the thing.
Well,
Once the Big Ten, the ACC, in my opinion, the ACC is going to go
It's
down.
done with. Yeah,
Okay,
yeah, they're going to be
the
done with.
ACC is
Clemson
going to be the
wants
next
out.
Pac-12.
UNC, Florida State, all of them are
No,
crying. They
no.
want out
So you're going to have the Big Ten, the
in the SEC.
SEC, and then the Big 12, and then everybody else is going to be playing. Everybody else will still be the NCAA will still be a thing, but I think those conferences right there will say, "Hey, no, either we're going to separate from you, or you're going to give us full autonomy over everything and just basically be our scapegoat, standing to the side because you're not. We're going to treat you like a side chick. You're not going to be the main one now."
Well, that's what Kim Hurst is saying. If yeah, if they do revenue sharing, right? How are they going to cover all the other sports, women's sports, golf, track, etc.? Look,
I
they're the
have no
side
idea.
chick. Chris said it. They're the side chick. You're not the entree.
No.
It is what it is. Sorry, track and field. You ain't the entree. You're the asparagus on the side. You ain't the steak.
Yeah,
You know what I'm saying?
I don't know the answer to that, but Boomer had a point saying poaching is not regulated, and that's 100% true, right? Like I've said this before, tampering is illegal, but guys, tampering is running rampant right now, and everybody's doing it. But like Josh Pate, I referenced it earlier. He was talking about he knows of 2 instances in the SEC where during the year, players came to the coaches and said, X school is offering me X money. What are you going to do about it? One of them is now out of the SEC and at Ohio State.
Well,
Came
guess
from
what?
Ole Miss, if you want to put.
Well, how about this? How about this? If these coaches that are complaining about all this shit, Lane Kiffin and Saban and Kirby, and if I haven't heard Sark, complain, but Lane's, like he's doing this thing, he's bitching about it, so is Kirby. When that stuff happens, why don't you report it? Go ahead and report it, Lane. Why aren't you reporting it, Lane?
Because Lane
Report it,
Kiffin is a
Lane.
hypocrite.
No, but there it goes. Hey, Lane, if it's happening, report it.
Lane Kiffin is a hypocrite because just 2 years ago, and I told you guys this. I said Lane cannot ever talk about NIL again, and at least I can't speak for everybody else, but he can't have my respect. Why? Because he bitched and moaned about it time and time again 2 years ago when the money was not coming in. Now time has changed. He's adapted. I'll give him that, but at the same time, he basically has put himself in a corner to where he's a hypocrite.
Yeah. So here's my thing. If it's that bad, Lane, and that happened to you, and a kid told you he's not going to step on the field because Ohio State or school X offered me 100 grand more than what you guys are giving me, go report them.
Mm-hmm.
But you're not going to do it, Lane, because you're part of the problem. Go
Mm.
report them.
Well, I also think the problem is systematic, which is why, and I hear you. I guess where I differ, Nino, is I think you're operating under the assumption that you're a 18-wheeler going down a hill. Have y'all ever been to those mountainous areas where there's the areas where the 18-wheelers
Yeah,
can
got
pull
pulled to
off?
the side. Yeah.
So I think from my perspective, you're operating under the assumption that the brakes fail. I'm the 18-wheeler driver. I'm just going to barrel through all the innocent civilians and kill them and not use the exit ramp. Like, we could solve this, but like you said, if it's always been there, why do anything? I guess my point is if we can make something better, why are we just going to continue letting it fail? Like, if we have the ability to do something, I
But
don't think that a good place to start is,
but
well, it's
wouldn't that
always
make
been
it
messed
better?
up.
No, but wouldn't that make it better? Wouldn't that be the start of making it better if one of your
Not when we could
premier
do something before. Like, I don't think that the best thing is letting something completely fail if you have multiple avenues to being able to fix it.
No, this is not making it fail. This is the start of the healing process. Like
I
this
think we're
is
past the healing process. Pandora's box has been opened.
all right. So healing process is probably the wrong word, but this is the start of. All right, hey guys, you guys don't believe this shit's happening this way? This is what's happening. Player X came to me and said this. Ohio State offered this. This is what we got to deal with every day. Let's fix it.
But they have done that. Like, I hear you saying about Lane Kiffin. Didn't Pat Narduzzi up there at Pittsburgh just come out and point out how Lincoln Riley and all them tampered with Jordan Addison? We all knew it happened and nothing happened because the NCAA can't do anything. So whether they say it or not, we've had coaches say it. It hasn't affected anything. We've had that happen, but it hasn't affected anything. So I guess at that point, I just don't think we're operating. I don't know. I don't think that the best case scenario is acknowledging, hey, there's been a problem. It's just like if a body is sick and it continues to get sicker, I don't think that the best thing is like, let's wait until it completely fails to then fix it. Like, if we can fix it now, I'm not one to be like sitting on my hands. I want to fix it now.
I get it. I guess my only thing is if there's like no kidding evidence and this kid came in there and did that and we had like no kidding evidence on Ohio State, you're talking about major suspension.
Well, I mean, I think at the point where Josh Pate is independent and he's talking about it happening, that's pretty good evidence. You know what I mean? Like, he's independent and he's talking about it. You have coaches talking about it. So I think it's being talked about, but the problem is the NCAA can't enforce anything.
James Trice, this is perfect. He goes healing process after creating a multi-billion-dollar entertainment empire off
Free labor, 100%.
Exactly. And that is the problem. This is why people don't have a problem with these kids getting paid. And this is why a lot of people don't give a damn how it happens. I'm gonna be honest with you. because guess what? College football is entertainment. No matter what people want to think about, it's entertainment. You know,
100%.
People get wrapped up in the feelings about this and who said this and who said that. But at the end of the day, this is entertainment. Nobody's going to die if your team loses. This is not for world freedom in America and solving hunger issues. This is to put us in front of our TVs and in stadiums on Saturdays and Sundays to watch kids play a sport that we love to watch. It's entertainment. It's no different than going to a movie. It's no different. All right. And so look, these guys are technically employees. They're not, but they are. And until the average fan realizes that these aren't normal students, because people love to throw around that student athlete thing, that but they're getting a free education. Bullshit. They're getting a basket weaving, like freaking degree that the school pushes on them, because they want them to stay eligible. Right.
Yeah,
And
100%.
and that's it. And
But
so
that's why
that's
I
why,
think that a revenue sharing gets everybody more money, and that'd be the best thing to save the sport. It would solve the equity problems. It would solve a lot of the problems we have now. Everybody would get paid more. It would be mutually beneficial. Maybe not for like other sports, but
yeah.
in terms of like all that, like, oh, kids would get more money in that model.
But
And
then
that's what Nick Saban was advocating for. The
but that's
kids
going
would
to be
end
the
up getting
problem,
more
though.
money.
It's the other sports, because now it's
True.
going to be, well, I'm not good enough. If I play tennis, and
Quite frankly, no. Because like you said, well, like here's the thing. There's two ideologies that can't simultaneously
I know,
exist.
I know.
This is a
I'm with you.
billion-dollar industry,
I'm
and
with
like,
you. I'm with you. I'm with you. It sucks for them,
but quite frankly, no.
but it's true. It's like your B-rated film versus your blockbuster film, right? This is what it is. NCAA is the funk facto. Have the schools vote in commissioners and start a new system with teeth. I just don't see how it's going to happen, Kim Hurst. I just don't. I don't see how they're going to separate it. I just like I don't see it happening. It's going to happen. I just don't see how it's going to happen. And it's got to be something so ingenious, man, that it's going to freak all of us out, to be honest with you. Profit sharing where there's no profit.
Oh, there's profit.
There's a ton of profit.
Oh, there's profit.
There's a ton of profit. That's crazy. Chris, you the lawyer, man.
Man, look, I gave you the idea about the contracts, man. I think it would be great. I think you get a big bank of them, man. Figure it out. What's up, Stephen G?
It's gonna be interesting. Stephen G, what's going on, brother? All right, man. It's been like an hour. We've been on here for an hour. I know Ty had to get out of here.
Yeah, I'm going to get my shin all tattooed up, so
Ah,
we're getting a shin blast.
Sounds like fun.
You getting a tattoo?
Yeah.
Oh my god.
I got the chest, and then I'm
give you an NIL deal for that, then, huh?
I don't know. Look here, Boomer's comment.
Oh.
Boomer, that is not a true statement. The school's return on investment in the players always at risk due to the schools aren't paying the players. They've already got the return on investment when they turn the TV on Saturdays.
Well, and to back up your point, Nino, because you're 100% right. The average 5-star at the point where they enroll, not when they've played a game, at the point where they enroll adds $500,000 of revenue to that university before they have played a game. The schools are fine.
The schools are fine. They're not, honestly, they're not having missed meal cramps. Okay. It is what it is. They're not having missed meal cramps. The schools are eating real good.
Real good.
They're eating real good. Look at the salaries of some of those employees from those state employees. They're eating real good. They're probably the highest paid state employees in the state. All reside at that school. So yeah, they're fine. The schools are not having a problem. So
no.
All right, fellas, man. It's time to get up out of here, man. We out, man. Come on, man. Put them horns up. All right, man. We out.